Hi class. Welcome to the end of the course, week 5. So I'm just going to spend this video talking totally about the assignment. So let's just jump right in. So your final assignment is a 5 to 6 page paper. And here is the prompt, the short prompt. In a 5 to 6 page essay, write on the following topic. What are the humanities and how are they relevant to our lives? Illustrate your discussion with reference to one specific ancient or medieval text assigned in this class and explain its relevance to modern society. Explain the text using one of the frameworks we explored in this class. That might be myth, philosophy, religion, or literature. You should refer to at least 2 secondary sources, but this is not a research paper. You should be able to complete the paper using only the required and recommended resources in this class. As a reminder, the Week 1 Resources tab has an explanation of how to cite things properly, these ancient texts and medieval. So another thing, some of you might have only read the required readings for the class. I would encourage all of you to go back and look at the recommended texts as well, as there are excellent articles and books there listed that will help you with this assignment. All right, so 5 to 6 pages. Here's a breakdown of what you should do. In page 1, no more than 1 page, explain your definition of the humanities. What are they? And then summarize their relevance to our lives. So in the first page, what are the humanities and why are they important to us? Or what do they provide us? For example, for me, the humanities provide beauty. Very important aspect of my life and something that I rely on the humanities a lot to provide me. That's just an example. Don't have to use that one. If you want to use that in your explanation of relevance, feel free. Okay, so that's the first page. The next page, page 2, explain the methodology you'll use to illustrate your claim about the humanities. State which text you'll use and which framework you'll use to analyze your chosen text. Give a brief summary of that framework, making sure to explain why it is considered part of the humanities and what distinguishes it from other humanities disciplines, and why it's a good framework for interpreting your chosen text. All right, so in page 2, you're going to state the text. Remember, if it's a longer text, to indent, using the tab function per APA requirements. So you incorporate the text. If it's a really long text that you want to explain, like a page, you could include the first paragraph and then just indicate by an ellipsis the end of it so that I know that it's the whole thing. But I would say try to focus on just a paragraph max. And sometimes you can just take one simple text. For example, Socrates' claim, "The unexamined life is not worth living." You could write on that. One line. What does that mean? And how is it relevant to our lives? So in the second page, you're going to include the quote or the passage that you're going to examine in the framework. The framework meaning, like, how are you going to approach this? Are you going to approach it philosophically? Are you going to approach it from a literature perspective? You could write a short story, right? Although that would be hard with the other elements you have to complete here. But are you going to focus on mythology? Are you going to focus on art? Choose the framework that you're going to focus on and explain that framework. That's page 2. So provide the quote, explain the framework that you're going to use. Page 2. And then in the next part should be no more than 3 pages, but this is the meat, right? So this is where you're going to interpret your chosen text using the framework you've selected, focusing primarily on the aspects of the text that are relevant to life in modern society. So don't just keep the text where it is, but apply it to your own life. So let's continue with our example. The unexamined life is not worth living. How does that apply to our lives today? It certainly does. We see all around us where ignorance leads people astray. So what does it mean for us to examine our lives in this context? We've already talked about it multiple times in this class. In one instance, we live in a continuously more globalized world. And so we have to examine things from other perspectives. And we have a lot more perspectives that are provided to us than people who grew up in ages that didn't have the globalization. Okay, so you're going to, in the next 2 to 3 pages, you're going to interpret the text you've selected, focus on how it, and explain how it relates to modern life. Don't just explain the text. Don't just summarize it. This is not a book. Don't book report me. The difference between, an analysis piece or an interpretive piece and a book report, don't just say what Socrates means here is this. Instead, use it to, you could use it to critique our society. You could use it to critique the way humans think. You could use it to critique yourself. You could use it to promote a positive theory on how it can contribute to a better life for us. Or you could posit it in relation to a specific contemporary moral problem. For example, another way, let's say you're going the mythological route. Think about the leaders that we studied from Medea and from Agamemnon and these other texts, the Odyssey. You could compare them to to Donald Trump, right? You could critique Donald Trump. You could support Donald Trump, depending on your perspective and how the things that you choose relate to that. Again, just another example, not something you have to do. But don't just summarize the text. Don't just say, what Augustine means here is this. You can say that, but then that needs to be just a brief explanation that then leads into the deeper, how does it relate to our world? How does it relate to your life? How does it teach you more about how you're going to approach your educational journey? I'm throwing out a ton of ideas here, I know, but I'm doing it on purpose to try to get you to think this way. So that's the next 3 pages, no more than 3. And then finally, a 1-page conclusion. Summarize how your chosen text fits into the definition of the humanities you stated in your introduction, and also how it serves as an example of the humanities' relevance to our lives as you summarized it in your introduction. So, however you define the humanities in the beginning, relate the text back to that definition. Explain how that text supports your claim about the humanities. And then relate it fundamentally to our lives. All right, so let's review. 5 to 6 page paper. Don't quadruple space. Don't put margins in. It's really easy for me to download your paper and just put the proper margins in. It takes 30 seconds. It actually just annoys me. So put in the time. You should be having to cut yourself off at 6 pages. You shouldn't have to try to make your paper reach 6 pages. And if that's the case, if you're stretching, then you need to do more research. You need to do more, read more articles, read more books. Perhaps you need to choose a different passage if it doesn't have that much meaning, or if it doesn't inspire that much creative thought. All right, so 5 to 6 pages. First page, introduction. Provide a clear definition of what the humanities are and a concise summary of its relevance to our lives. Page 2, explain the methodology you'll use to illustrate your claim about the humanities, your definition. What methodology are you going to use to explain your definition? State which text you'll use in page 2. So put the text in there. And then give a brief summary of that framework, making sure to explain why it is considered part of the humanities. That's page 2. The next 3 pages, interpret your text, focusing on what's relevant to modern life. Don't just summarize it. Use it to explain something or to critique something. That's the next 3 pages. The final page, provide a conclusion in which you summarize how your chosen text fits into the definition of the humanities, the way that you've defined the humanities, and then explain the relevance, the humanities' relevance to your own life as you've summarized it in the introduction. So that's a little bit confusing, but at the end what you're doing essentially is you're wrapping it all up. You're supporting your claim that the humanities are what you claim that they are, and then you finally conclude by, now that I know that my definition of the humanities is this and that it provides this in our lives, it does this for us, as humans, or for me as myself. All right, so I've thrown out a lot of stuff there. I hope that helps. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out directly to me.